Hello, everyone. It's Neil, and this is the Big Bad Movie Show. And this week I am watching from 1933. It's King Kong, my favorite movie ever. Well, one of my favorites. You know what? I'll talk about that over the overture. So let's just get this started. As usual, we're paused at 0 and we count down from 5. And on 0 we play. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, play. Okay, so as I was saying, I think having a favorite anything is kind of BS. I mean, we all say, oh, this is my favorite movie, or my favorite video game, my favorite song. But I've discovered that my favorites are kind of like shifting sand. It's always different from one moment to the next. So I just have like a number of favorite movies, but no absolute favorite. We all kind of shift in our likes and dislikes, but I'll tell you what is my favorite right here. Pepsi with real sugar. It is I don't care what anyone says, it's the most delicious thing in the world. Maddox. It is not the biggest problem in the universe, sir, I'll have you know. It's quite delicious. You know, I really like this slow build-up at the beginning where it just lulls you into complacency, eases you in, takes you by the hand, brings you into this movie that's going to get crazy in about an hour. Love it. By the way, I'm going to try to curb the ums and ahs and likes because I just did it there. Because I have to edit this stuff, and I hear myself. I hear all those. So if you're annoyed by that, I'm probably annoyed by it tenfold. Because I go back through these, and if I hear any pops or hisses or anything, I take them out. Or if I say something really stupid, I'll mute myself. And I have to hear all these, like what you just heard there. So I'll try not to do that. But I let on in a earlier commentary that I love this movie. I was on another podcast where we talked about it with Melissa. You know, I don't even remember her name now, but she was in the Atop the Fourth Wall movie, and that was strange because it was the same week that the other animator. Let's see if I can get his name. Ray Harryhausen. It was the same week that Ray Harryhausen died, and I believe we recorded it the day before. And we were very, very strange. We were talking about him like, oh yeah, he's still around, he's still alive, and then he was gone. That was very, very strange. Weird timing, I should say. Okay, I believe this is wrapping up. Let's see how much time we have left. Yeah, another minute. This movie is almost 100 minutes on the button. I think it's a few seconds short. And Son of Kong is 70 minutes, so it's nearly 3 hours long, which means you can watch both Kong and Son of Kong in the same amount of time that you could watch Peter Jackson's Kong. I know his extended cut, it's over 3 hours. By the way, is this frozen? I've always wondered that. It seems to be just a like a slide. See, the grain is frozen in place. You'll see the same pattern again during the opening credits, how it's moving. A radio picture. Because this was when radio was cutting edge technology. I always love how in old TV shows, they'll treat the technology of the day as if it's just the wave of the future. You know, like vacuum tubes on the Jetsons and stuff like that. That's what they thought the future was going to be. This movie's almost autobiographical. Miriam C. Cooper was someone who would go to Africa and Asia and film all these exotic animals and show them to people who'd never seen them before. And that's a big theme of this movie, is that this was made at a time when there were still parts of the world that were unexplored and exotic, and to go to these places and take a picture of something like a tiger or a gorilla and then bring that back to the United States, that was really something. Of course, now Google Images, not no, Google Earth has more or less ruined that. Of course, I'm not really complaining about Google Earth. I love technology. But oh, this proverb is bullshit. There is no such proverb. But the mystery and exotic nature of unexplored lands is why I love this movie so much. Because I kind of miss that when there were parts of the world that we didn't know anything about, and now we have access literally at our fingertips. With the stroke of a keyboard, we can go anywhere and see anything, and there's not that much mystery anymore. And it seems to reflect itself in how people write movies now, how everything has to be very carefully explained, and people really love their expositionary dialogue these days. Now, this scene is expositionary dialogue, but it's still of the 30s, so you have that delivery that's like, "Oh, he ain't afraid of nothing." They're explaining, but they're not beating you over the head with it. And that's very important, because for the first 20 to 30 minutes of this movie, they got to keep you reeled in, because not a whole lot happens during that point, but they're seeding you for what's coming, and they let you in little by little. And it's something that doesn't happen in Son of Kong, which I'll get into next time, because I have to do Son of Kong for, I don't know, God knows what reason. Just to do it, I suppose. Those gas bombs. Those props were in Peter Jackson's King Kong. By the way, I've seen all three King Kongs, but I've not seen Skull Island yet, which came out earlier this year. I don't know what it is, but I don't think King Kong and Godzilla really go together. And that's what they're building up to. They're going to have a King Kong Godzilla crossover, a remake of King Kong versus Godzilla, or is it Godzilla versus King Kong? Well, in any event, Kong and Godzilla are two different monsters. Godzilla is a Godzilla is the product of the nuclear age, the atomic bomb, man meddling in nature, and King Kong is just a force of nature. They both have similar ideas about man getting involved with nature, but they go in different directions, I think. I'm just going to say up front that there's a lot of sexism in this movie, but it's not my prerogative to harp on that, because this is the 1930s, and it's. I feel like it's beating a dead horse when you're doing something like this, because you have to expect that that's going to be here. So I don't really like putting contemporary criticisms on a movie this old. Nobody who did this movie is alive today anyway, so who am I critiquing? It's really it's really an advisory for the audience. Know what you're getting into when you're watching this movie. You're going to hear a lot of oh, girls are nothing but trouble and stuff like that. And you'll see some uncomfortable racist things too. Some people cringe about the Islanders, but I think Charlie the Cook is maybe the most cringeworthy thing in this movie. You know, the guy who's like, me no like. I go back to China. That guy. I love Robert Armstrong in this movie. I love the delivery, the 1933 delivery here. Oh yeah? Well, I'll show you. I'm gonna shoot me a picture. I'm gonna go out and get me a dame. Yeah, see? I believe that's Times Square. I think I usually fast forward through this part because this is the slowest part of the movie. Him going through New York. I don't even remember this. Oh yeah, the Great Depression. It's a nice way to touch upon this because this movie did come out at the height of the Great Depression, and it's kind of beaten over your head in the Peter Jackson version. Speaking of the Peter Jackson version, a nice touch was casting Jack Black. I believe the reason why they picked him was because he resembles Orson Welles, which was pretty good. In fact, I don't know if they've done it yet, but there's a line early in this movie where he talks about other directors taking up all the other stars. And in the Peter Jackson version, there's a nice touch where they try to get Fay Wray, and they mention that she's doing a Cooper film, Miriam C. Cooper. And Denham is like, Cooper. Now, Denham is the closest thing to a villain in this movie, but he's not really a villain. I don't like the mustache twirling, uh, evil, evil capitalist, evil producer, corporate CEO. You know, everything they try to do in movies these days, where it's the guy who's greedy who's the villain, and I just hate that. That's just beaten over the head. This guy is much more about excitement and adventure and wanting to give the people something they've never seen before, and he gets caught up in doing the wrong thing. Like the Charles Grodin character in the 70s remake, I didn't like that at all. How he's an evil oil magnate. And when he brings Kong to the United States, I believe they had Kong either positioned between two giant-sized gas pumps, or he was covered up by a gas pump, or some. There was something about a gas pump in that shot that was really ridiculous. If you go back and watch that scene, you'll know what I'm talking about. And they built a life-size King Kong for that scene too. It's the only time there was ever a life-size King Kong on film, and it was supposed to be animatronic, but they couldn't get it moving. Okay, like I said earlier, there's a line coming up here that, if you hear them, if you hear it, uh, there might be someone with a fedora who might cry. That wasn't it. There's no fedora tipping on this show, though. See right there? He softens up pretty quickly over the first half of the movie. First time I saw this movie was when I was pretty young, and I think that was during the time that they were still airing the edited version. And I'm not really sure why the edited version exists. I believe it might have been the Hays Code, but I'm not sure. In 1934, after this movie came out, there was a code about decency and all sorts of bullshit that a lot of movies had to adhere to, and that's why they took out a lot of scenes like, Kong tearing off her dress and sniffing his finger, and the Islanders getting chewed up by Kong and stomped on, and all sorts of grody things. Now here's what I was talking about, the way they portray Charlie the cook. Sorry, Charlie. But they actually take out a good chunk of the middle of the movie. There's that whole raft scene that gets taken out, and that's a weird thing to take out. I will get to it eventually, but and I'll explain more in detail. But they take a chunk out, and it's it's a scene where the pace of the movie changes, and that's why it's so weird. Maybe I'm just trying to talk over this scene to get past these early scenes of Jack Driscoll being a cad. Jeez. Sorry. That's probably the worst line in the movie. See, he softens. Careful, that thing will rip your face off. Isn't that right? Those things, don't they, don't they have like wicked strength? Is he gonna break out into song here? Tale as old as time. So this movie went through a few rewrites. It ended up ended up being written by Ruth Rose, who I believe was Schoedsack's wife. Of course, if it turned out to be Cooper's wife, I'd have a lot of egg on my face right now. But I'll say Schoedsack. Oh, he just said it. He's gonna break out into song. But it went through a few rewrites. For a time, Kong was going to be put in a circus. What were some of the other ones? There was a version where they didn't even spend time on the island. They just pulled up to the beach, and Kong was already there, and they captured him, and that allowed them to do more of the story on the mainland. But I'm glad they went in this direction because it's the island itself that gives this movie its character. All the wacky things on the island. Dinosaurs. Everybody loves dinosaurs, as I said in the Transformers commentary. See, I love the mystery of this. Mysterious map, mysterious island. Mythical stories. This skipper shows up in Son of Kong, by the way. This guy he's talking about. Unfortunately. See, all of this is just reeling you in slowly. By a wall. They need it. So what makes Legends so fun is that you could actually go somewhere and discover if it's actually real or fake or whatever. And I didn't really like the way Peter Jackson did it because Peter Jackson and his crew like to come up with a history for their myths. Like they came up with a whole history of Skull Island that supposedly made sense to them. Like it was something about a uh, a civilization that lived in the center of the island, and then the island surrounding it was where all the creatures were, and slowly the island began sinking. And so, as the island began sinking, all the animals pushed their way into the center of the island, past the wall, and that explains how the wall got there, and why there are ruins in the middle of the island. And that's not actually in the movie, but it annoys me that they did that. It's like what I was saying earlier about people who need explanations for everything. This scene, I was always confused by this scene because I'm thinking, what the hell is he filming? Supposedly this is some kind of test reel, but he's not going to be able to develop it until he gets back to the mainland. He can't do it on the ship, I don't think. And he's going to the location, so he's not going to be able to see this roll of film until after he gets back, after he shot all the footage. But I don't know. I guess you're not really supposed to think about that. This is all building up to them wondering what the hell they're going to see on the island. That maybe Carl Denham knows a bit more than what he's letting on. See, we're already 20 minutes in and we're almost to the island. How long did it take them to get to the island on the Peter Jackson version? Wasn't it like an hour? It's definitely an hour in the extended cut, I'll tell you that. I'd like to make my own cut of that movie. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll make it shorter than this one. There's a lot of unnecessary garbage in that film. And it seems like the Peter Jackson version just exists to dot every I and cross every T, leave no stone unturned, make sure he tells every little speck of detail of the story that he can, and it's just not as compelling. Drums. Now, what is this? They're not actually there. This is a... That looks like a matte painting composited with some ocean footage, and that might be just rear projection onto a translucent piece of film when they're just looking at it. They're obviously not on a boat out in the middle of the Indian Ocean, that's for sure. Complete lack of humidity. Nobody's sweating like a pig here. By the way, Bob Armstrong and Fay Wray both appeared in another movie shot more or less at the same time called The Most Dangerous Game. And I've seen that movie, and I'm going to do a commentary on that sometime in the future. It's not a good movie at all, really. But it was very smart of the studio to build one set and shoot two movies with it, I'll say that. Of course, they used a jungle set, and with the exception of one shot, you can't really identify any landmark that exists in both movies. The only thing that really stands out is the log set. The log that Kong pushes down into the spider pit. That wall. There was probably a miniature version of that and a full-size version of that, but I don't know how tall the full-size version of it probably doesn't go all the way up. But you'll definitely see the full size version later in the movie. And apparently it got burned to the ground in Gone with the Wind. This movie invented a whole bunch of special effects. Some of the composite shots in this movie are really impressive, considering what they had to work with. And this is the ceremony for the Bride of Kong. I think she would be a little more terrified than that. She must know what she's getting herself into. That this is some kind of ritual that they do regularly. And I love that the producers of this movie never really thought about what Kong does with these girls. There's certainly no evidence that anyone before Fay Ray ever survived Kong. I love the guy who was ready to hightail it out of there. This is Noble Johnson. I love the Looney Tunes walk music that they have going here. Boom, 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 boom. It reminds me of Looney Tunes Merry Melodies, where every footfall was a note, was a musical note. Okay, now open fire. Take his advice. Yeah, you're right. Let's just get out of here. Credits. That's right. If people did things sensibly, then a lot of movies would have no plot and they'd be about 5 minutes long. Hey, I got an idea. Then someone else says, "Hey, I have a better idea. Let's not do anything." End of movie. I will not be making the witch doctor joke, by the way. You Alvin and the Chipmunks fans out there. I love as he walks away. He tips his hat forward and whistles like he's being inconspicuous. Like anyone else on this island. And just think, if you were watching the Peter Jackson version, we'd still be on the ocean by now. I mean, I assume they would have left by now, right? Still filming scenes in New York. I mean, at least the '70s version had the good sense to already be on the ocean when the film started. That was a weird version of that movie with the character named Dwan. They named her Dwan. And the reason that version of the film got made was because there was some kind of lawsuit with RKO and Universal over whether or not King Kong is in the public domain. And you may have heard that they proved that it was, and that was the basis for Nintendo winning their lawsuit later with Donkey Kong. It turns out that's not entirely true. King Kong is not necessarily in the public domain. I don't remember exactly what it is. It's a very complicated case, so it's not like if you think King Kong is in the public domain and you're a movie maker or some other kind of content creator who thinks they can just make a King Kong uh, production, you might be in for a little surprise. I mean, when Legendary Pictures made Skull Island, I understand that there was still some legal work that needed to be done to have that made. So I really don't know anymore. I don't. such such confusing bullshit. And what, there have been exactly four King Kong movies. Well, five if you count Kong Lives, or six with the Godzilla versus King Kong. Actually, now I'm gonna think of a whole bunch of King Kong movies that were made overseas. I think Japan had done a few of them actually. There's, I believe there's a Lost King Kong movie. There was a early kaiju film of some sort that that got destroyed in World War II. See, Mino like. This movie is 85 years old, by the way. Comedy loves the slow thinker. Really took him a minute there to piece that together. Yeah, I heard that. Just gonna keep going. I can't help see a little bit of private Saving Private Ryan in this movie. All these guys have to go out there and risk their lives just for one person. And I don't believe any of the movies really touched on that. How there might be some resentment of these guys who are risking their lives, and almost all of them end up dying just to save a single person. I mean, if I were to do a Kong remake, I might touch on that. Of course, I'm not a movie maker, and that's not hubris on my part. I would never be in that position. I know that. I don't have that sort of delusion. Because I know we live in the age that everyone thinks that they're a content producer now. Because they can shoot video on their phone. I can make a movie. Oh, no, you'll never see a movie made by me. That's a whole different type of art as far as I'm concerned. I know nothing about movie making. I'm more of an illustrator. I know that. Of course, if you are a movie maker and you need a storyboard artist, you can check out my Google Plus page. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, my idea of a Kong story, if I were ever in the position of helping someone to produce such a thing, I would at least suggest doing a story about the guys who have to go into the jungle and save Ann Darrow. And I would not do the thing that the two remakes try to do, which is to establish a relationship between Kong and the girl, because that's so weird to me that they do that. I mean, the second one isn't so bad, the Peter Jackson one, because it's more about them being friends. But it still gets kind of weird at the end when Anne goes to Kong in the city and they go play in the park. They go slide around on the ice in the park. It's like, why would she do that? But I know people who think that Ann Darrow and King Kong have a relationship in this movie, and I just don't see it. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Because she's screaming throughout the entire movie, and she's trying to get away. Even when Kong is up on Skull Mountain, which is the last time she's with him, she's still trying to get away. When did they have a relationship? I don't know. And she's still scared of him in New York. So I don't know where people got that idea. Oh, composite shots. All those guys on top of that wall, they're not really there. I believe that's a miniature wall, and everything on top is shot separately and composited in. Again, 1933. They did that. And now you and I can do that on our laptops. I was talking about James Rolfe on an earlier commentary, and I was talking about him not really being a video game reviewer per se. It's just a persona, an entertainment persona that he does. But I do really consider him a movie buff, and I really love his videos about movies. He did a bunch of Kong reviews a few months ago, or those might be reposted from years past. I know he's been reposting a lot of movie reviews with stills instead of movie footage because of YouTube zapping the monetization on older videos. But that guy really knows his shit. I love watching James Rolfe talk about old movies. He talks about old monster movies like Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi. When I was a kid, this scared the shit out of me, especially the close up like that. And now it looks so fake. It's so obviously a rubber mask, and it doesn't match the stop motion puppet at all. But see, they do such a good job of making them look as if they're in the same space that you totally buy that he's 50 feet tall. Of course, I never really understood where he was in relation to that. Like, is that on a pedestal in front of him, I guess? But are there steps? She kind of falls off of it, and I assume she just kind of falls down an incline like a set of stairs. Bruce Cabot does a good wild take here in just a second. He gets up to the door. Right there. See, we're 50 minutes in, and we're off to the races here. Gonna run through the jungle. Yes, that was a CCR reference. Don't you guys like Fogarty? Again, I'm not sure if this is a composite shot, but I love the lighting in this jungle. How the farther you look back, the brighter it gets. Very storybook. See, this is all made for the most dangerous game, which is a movie that, for a movie that poor, it's been ripped off a shit ton of times. Like, there was The Pest with John Leguizamo. There's, what was it? It was Ice Cube who did one. There's a movie with Stone Cold Steve Austin that was a ripoff of Most Dangerous Game. By the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's the storyline where uh, there's some hunter millionaire who always gets bored with hunting the big game, so he decides to hunt the most dangerous prey of all, humans. So he invites them all to a resort island, and then he sets them all free and hunts them down one by one. And you've probably seen it represented in cartoons too. There's a Transformers episode that is a ripoff of Most Dangerous Game. See, here's what we're here for, the dinosaurs. This is rear screen projection. You can kind of see the way the foliage is framed around the screen. They could have done a better job framing that, I think, but it's done so well and it's so seamless, you can barely tell that that's what it is. Now there's a shot later in this scene that's a little hokier, and I'll be sure to point that out. Because I'm such a bastard, I like tearing apart the movies that I love. But I can't imagine what it must have been like in 1933 to go see this movie and not have any idea what the hell you're looking at. Like, how the hell did they do this? This shot, okay. See, now it's way too big in frame. That animal's skull is not that big. I mean, for the size of that animal, the skull is surprisingly tiny. And if you watch their walking, it doesn't really match the pan on the camera. Like one of them, I think either stops or stumbles, and it kind of gives it away. Something from the age of the dinosaurs. See right there. See, he wasn't walking there and the camera was still panning along. Okay, about right here, this is where stuff starts getting cut. Because I believe this is the raft scene. And the raft scene is not in the cut version at all. And I believe what happened was the MPAA made a new ruling called the Hays Code that Hollywood had to follow for a good while to be a little more tasteful, I guess you might say. Really, one of the most draconian things that film ever had to go through. And when this movie was re-released in 1938, there were a bunch of scenes like this one that just didn't cut it, so it had to be cut. And miraculously, there was still a complete version of this film that existed in England, and someone found it, and it wound up back at Warner Brothers, who owns I believe they own the entire RKO archive, I think. So that's how we have this version. Here's a composite shot. Not the most convincing shot in the movie. You can kind of see the matte lines a little. But still not too bad. They were inventing this stuff for this movie. There was nothing like this before this movie came out. I mean, there were things like Lost World, but it was never anything on this scale. I think someone forgot to tell Willis O'Brien that sauropods are not carnivores. See, here's where I think the Saving Private Ryan stuff would fit in. You just need a beat where these guys have to, slow down, take a rest, and then start talking about whether or not this is really worth it. There's some other stuff that's cut in this movie around here, and I don't really know how much of it got filmed. I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows how much got filmed of the stuff that got cut. But there was a whole Styracosaurus scene that was in here where it wasn't just one, there was a whole family of Styracosauruses. And they came across them while trying to escape this thing. And that led to another chase, which led to the log scene. And that all got cut. And I've heard that the next to final cut of this movie was something like 14 reels, and then it got chopped down to 11. And it seems to me like they combined 2 reels in one shot and then took one whole reel out. And I think this is one spot where they combined a couple reels. Because there is quite a bit taken out of here. But that's just my personal conjecture. I don't know if they really filmed the Styracosaur stuff. But I can't imagine what else they cut out. And another part where they cut out is they cut out a huge exposition scene that happens while Anne is being taken from the ship. And this is about where they cut back into the movie, and it's not really clear why they're running through the jungle. I really want to watch the edited version again, because even so, I don't remember finding it weird that they were suddenly running. It didn't seem like anything was missing. But I wonder if I saw it now, if I would see the cut. The big jump. See, you can see some of the matte lines here. Oh, that's a good trick where they, Willis O'Brien has the puppet kind of acting along with the log, and it really well, as I was saying, it really matches up well. There was one spot where it didn't. And coming up here is the reel that definitely got cut. It was the spider pit scene. It was in the movie at one point, and it got cut out for various reasons. Pacing, it stopped telling the story. It just changes focus so that we can see what happens down in the pit to these sailors who might as well be presumed dead. There's no reason to go down and pretend like some of them existed just to watch them get killed all over again. And Peter Jackson did a remake of the spider pit scene in the style of classic King Kong, and he recut it into a scene of the movie. And that version, I don't know, it kind of looks like a Ray Harryhausen stop motion animation feature, which is not an insult by any means, but what I mean is that it does not look like something Willis O'Brien would have animated. It looks a little too slick. It looks more like Ray Harryhausen. And there's a really ridiculous version of it in Peter Jackson's remake. And this thing was in the spider pit, and this is the only evidence in the film that that scene even existed. And one of the main reasons we know about the spider pit scene is because there was a magazine in the 60s or 70s that showed a few stills from it. And that to me is I often wonder where those stills came from because that seems like evidence to me that maybe that film actually survived to a certain point. Because where would you have gotten that if not the movie itself? It's very rare for stills of the puppets to exist, you know, outside of the movie itself. I know there are a couple, but my understanding was that having photography inside that animation studio was a little bit of a taboo because Cooper and O'Brien didn't really want it getting out how they did this. So there's not a lot of footage of them animating at all. And those stills are framed like a shot in the movie, so I'm thinking those have to have come from the movie itself. So maybe that survived at one point and someone took a couple stills from it. But who knows if it's still around. I mean, people think that Cooper probably burned it in the 30s to keep other people from using it. But if it survived after that, there's studio fires. I mean, there are all sorts of things that could have happened to it. Or it could be in some rusty film can in a salt mine somewhere. Next to the rest of the footage from Wizard of Oz. And these two films, King Kong and The Wizard of Oz, are my two favorite movies that I would love to see the lost scenes. I mean, you get just enough to be tantalizing, but you don't really get what you want to see. Most of the stuff cut from The Wizard of Oz is stuff from The Witch, because apparently what she was saying was really scary. And you can see in a lot of scenes in that movie where she starts talking, but there's no sound, and they just cut away from her. It's usually because she was saying things that scared the children, and it's really unfortunate that that doesn't exist right now. And I'm talking over the bus fight in the movie, the T-Rex scene. And they aped this in the 2005 remake. No pun intended. Like frame for frame, he does the thing where he's playing with the jaw. Which is cute, but it takes me out of the movie for a little bit. That suddenly I'm not thinking about what's going on in the story. Now I'm thinking about, oh, the animator was miming the scene from the old King Kong. I think that's the problem with any time you make a pop culture reference in movies, even though you're quoting your own original source material. People get way carried away with that sort of thing. I'm referencing something you've seen before, aren't I clever? Got to cover, you got caught in a bush. He never even made it to the log scene, I don't think. That's always been a strange thing, him looking back like that. Because you start to wonder if maybe that's where he's thinking about capturing Kong. Because that's not even an idea yet in this point in the movie. But that is the part in the movie in Peter Jackson's version where they start hinting at that idea. Because the film gets destroyed, and that was all that. That's everything that that Carl Denham was really concerned about. So he doesn't have his film. So now he has to think about actually just capturing King Kong. But in this movie, I don't think that's actually the case. I don't think he thinks about capturing Kong until they got him knocked out on the beach. Because I don't really like thinking of Carl Denham as the mustache twirling, scheming uh, sort of character. I like that we're a little more ambiguous here, where we don't really have villains. See, really clever composite work here. How you have the real actor there, uh, moving in the same space as the stop motion puppet, and you really can't tell where one set ends and another begins. Now in this scene, that's clearly a little man puppet there. That's not him. Now this is the shot that a lot of people always rave about. How there's all these elements going on at once. There's Kong. There's two spots where the actors would be standing. There's smoke rising. There's a bubbling lake. I mean, Willis O'Brien was a mad genius to do all this. I mean, to choreograph this, the things you have to keep track of. And you'll see here in a second that Jack Driscoll enters the shot. See, there he is. But he has to be in front of the rock because that's a little screen there, and there's a camera that's shooting from behind. Here you can kind of see it falling apart. You can tell she's not really looking at Kong, and she's not reacting to any of the quick movements. And I think a lot of the reason why people like old films like this is because there's a sense of wonder in just how they did this. Not like today where you know that you can do pretty much anything. You know, you can put a giant ape in the same frame with a five with a 5'6" woman and have it as seamless as possible. Here there's a lot of trickery to do shots like this. I mean, if you look close enough, you can see that the rocks are kind of inconsistent there, but you can you can always kind of see that kind of halo around where the people would be in the shot. Here's what I was talking about earlier, him disrobing her. One of the many scenes that got cut from the 38 version. And the way they did this is that hand you see is not attached to the puppet. That's a real shot of a life-size King Kong hand, and then the puppet is acting in front of that. Probably another rear projection trick. See, she slowly gets more complacent with being with Kong. She's not as panicked, but she's still trying to get away. Like, she realizes that he's probably not going to hurt her. But still, she's trying to get the hell out of Dodge. Completely different movie in the 70s version, where they're actually playing together. Also found the 70s version to be really disappointing in that there weren't any creatures on the island with the exception of Kong and a giant snake. Of course, that's what you get when you have a De Laurentiis production. It's like one step above a Canon film or Golden Globus. So I don't remember. Did I mention anything about Creation, the unfinished movie that was the prototype to King Kong? It's where a lot of the dinosaur puppets come from. I don't think. Well, maybe this pterodactyl, but the the T-Rex, the Styracosaurus that I mentioned earlier, the the sauropod, they all came from creation, which was a completely different movie, but some elements of it are in Son of Kong. It's a movie about a family that gets stranded on an island very similar to this, and they run into dinosaurs, and it's a story about them trying to get rescued and getting the radio to work, and it was really kind of a lifeless script and a lot of silly ideas about the way dinosaurs used to behave. Them hissing and acting like reptiles, which you still get a little bit of that in this film, like the T-Rex wiggling its tail and stuff like that, dragging it on the ground, which I always thought was kind of funny because that idea of dinosaurs dragging their tails on the ground, that was discredited pretty early on, but that idea stayed in pop culture until almost until Jurassic Park came out. In fact, Jurassic Park might have been the thing that finally did away with that. And it's obviously more natural for them to walk like that, with their tail up in the air. But ironically enough, the cover of Jurassic Park, that silhouette of the T-Rex skeleton, that is taken from a photo from the Field Museum here in Chicago, and that's from a skeleton that's posed with its tail dragging on the ground. And you can see that it's wrong because they have to break the tail. I don't understand that. You'd think that would be a clue to them that if you have to break the tail to make it drag on the ground, then maybe it doesn't do that. Hmm. Maybe he was thinking about capturing Kong. I think it makes a little more sense in this film because you can you can kind of you can kind of see him thinking about it, but he doesn't really act on it until the opportunity presents itself. Like if Kong hadn't come back to the village, he might not have been so eager to suggest it. I just saw an extra lose one of their wigs when the chicken coop got knocked over there. After the movie's over, after the commentary's done, go back and check that out. See, this is the giant-sized wall I was talking about. Like, did they actually build that all the way up to the top, or is this just a? Well, I guess they built it up pretty high, because that was pretty high up there. And like I said earlier, I think I'd heard that it got burned down in Gone with the Wind. Of course, I tried looking for that. I don't think you can actually see the Kong wall per se. They probably just disassembled it or something, used it for kindling. This is where a lot of the cut content is as well. Anything with these villagers dying got cut. So when he's stomping them into the mud or chewing on them or stuff like that, that's stuff that was taken out. But thank God this survived, or else we might not have this today. Or I guess there was a 16 millimeter version that survived as well, but it looked pretty cruddy. This is kind of a cool shot how they make it look like he walk past their plane. See, stuff like that. Groucho Marx right there. Some of this gets really dark too. This kind of resembles the elephant stampede in one of Cooper's other. See that like that right there, that guy getting smushed into the ground, and he slowly stops flailing. I think there's one that's even worse than that. Yeah, right here. Watch this guy slowly die. It's like smushing him out like a cigarette. That's a pretty cool shot. I don't know if that's composited or if they just have one of the puppets really close to the camera there. If that's what they did, that's probably the only shot in the film where the puppet and the actors are actually in the same shot. Smash cut. Supposedly that's a composite shot. That's that pan down. Like that playbill wasn't actually there, but all those people were. Those darling tigers. That line. Well, I never. See, again, where did the idea ever come from that there was a relationship between Kong and Ann Darrow? Because she's still frightened of him. In fact, she's kind of complicit in his capture. She doesn't seem to be the least bit disgusted with Carl Denham for capturing King Kong, which is what they did in the Peter Jackson version, which I kind of rolled my eyes at. She wanted nothing to do with Carl Denham's public showing of King Kong. She is stunning in this movie. And that's a wig. She's not really blonde. She's actually brunette. Now, what's with this curtain? Those are painted. Those tassels right there. Those aren't really there. That's a painting. But it goes up like it's a curtain. So I don't know. I don't know what's up with that. I don't know, maybe someone could fill me in if that's something they would have done back then. I love that tagline, "The Eighth Wonder of the World." That again, that feeds into the mythology and wonder of what King Kong is. That you could still have mystery and mythology in the world, and discover things that you didn't know existed before we had every inch of this globe mapped by a computer, by satellites and computers. And there may still be some wonder out there, but it's rapidly shrinking. But I love putting Kong in the same category as the wonders of the world, like the Hanging Gardens and the pyramids and all that. Where to this day we still don't know how they made those things. And if we really encountered something like this, we have no idea where this sort of beast would have come from. Chrome steel. Oh, okay. That makes sense. That would be terrifying to see him wiggling around like that, even if he doesn't get free. Neat bit of continuity here is that he has one arm brace on for the rest of the picture on his right arm, I think. And whenever he throws something into the foreground, it's not coordinated very well. They wish they had done that a little better. It's like he does the motion where he's throwing something down and then it falls. This seems like a shot I see in a lot of movies. The the gate opens and all the police cars come roaring out, fire engines and stuff like that. This is the worst. You know, you're just at home minding your own business. You have no idea what the hell's going on, and then this thing comes along and just drops you to your death. And this right here is probably, yeah, that's the worst effect shot in the movie. Maybe should have thought about cutting that. What horrible timing that they just happened to stroll into this hotel room right as Kong happens to be climbing by. Run? You know, even as much as I don't like Peter Jackson's remake of this, I really wish they could have gotten her to do that scene at the end of the movie, Fay Ray, because she was supposed to come in at the very end and say, "'Twas beauty killed the beast," and that would have been fantastic if that could have happened. Because I do believe she was the last surviving last surviving cast member of this movie. But she did give her blessing to Naomi Campbell to play that role, which was nice. So they cut the spider pit scene because it stopped the story, and kind of made the pace of the movie awkward, I guess. But they added this scene. And the legend goes that the original cut of the movie was 13 reels, and Cooper said, "No way is my movie gonna go out at 13 reels, so I'll make an extra scene and bump it up to 14." And that's how this scene got made. And I don't know if any of that's true, but it does seem like this scene has nothing to do with the movie. Like, it doesn't advance the story at all. It's just some random scene of Kong causing havoc in the city. And it happens after he captures Anne. So he has Fay Wray in his paw the entire time he's killing people on this train. And if that's true, that means this is also the final shot that was done for the movie. The last thing filmed, I mean. I don't know if you heard that. I think a bird just ran into the window outside. Of course, this new microphone I got is pretty good at not picking stuff up like that. My old microphone, you could hear everything. I love the reporters. Oh boy, what a story. Now that's the real Empire State Building, but I think they had something rigged so they could shoot the Kong puppet separately and really make it look like he's climbing the building. Schoedsack and Cooper they're the pilots in one of these planes. Now, am I wrong? Is the top of this building scaled differently in the Peter Jackson version? And if it is, it's probably more correct in that version. Because they had done everything in their power to be super accurate in that film, including spending an inordinate amount of time rendering a 1933 accurate New York City. So I'm going to assume that if there's a scale difference, then this version is wrong. But not that it takes anything away from this film, because it really doesn't. You know, if there's any justification for them making a relationship between Anne and Kong, this is probably the scene that justifies it the most. Because in the Peter Jackson version, I kind of have to concede that that her trying to protect Kong adds a little bit of drama to the scene, whereas here this is more or less an execution. As iconic as the scene is, there isn't a lot of drama here. This is literally them just shooting him down. I think he grabs one plane. It's really cool how there are real planes and fake planes in the same shot. Like right there. God, I love this movie. And this is 100 minutes, and it just kind of flew by. I have my own rule, which is the 100-minute rule, which is 100 minutes is about where I start checking my watch, or I guess my phone. Do people even wear watches anymore? But anyway, I start checking the time, and every minute you go over, I just get more and more impatient. You need to start justifying your film once you go over 100 minutes. I'm looking at you, Peter Jackson. One of my closest friends, her little brother, tried to get me on that because I said, a movie over 100 minutes, unless it can really justify it, is too long. And he's like, well, no, you see, because if you say that, then you're saying Lord of the Rings is too long. And it's not too long because, it's Lord of the Rings. And then he sits down and he just gives me the smug look like, yeah, gotcha. And I just look at him, I'm like, yes, Lord of the Rings is too long. All three of them. I mean, cut that shit down. Jesus Christ. I can only watch so many minutes of people walking. And yes, Kevin Smith is right about that. Those movies are just people walking. And that's my smarmy know-it-all voice. No, you're wrong, because, you see, if what you're saying is true, then this other thing would be true, and it's not true, so you're wrong. And I swear that's exactly how he said it. This is where all that Beauty and the Beast stuff comes back into play. That bullshit proverb, too. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that was King Kong. I hope you watched it with me. If you just listened, it might have been a little boring because had some dead air in there. Me trying to figure out what I was supposed to say. Babbling, Good night.